Hello, hello out there. I'm Poetic Heretic, and today we are continuing our new Astrology Basics series by analyzing the moon and interpreting the meaning of the moon in astrology. So let me get everything set up here. I'm coming to you a little bit late today, later than usual, but on a very sunny afternoon. Hello, Tanya. Welcome to the stream. So I'm just going to kind of make sure that everything is working here. And we will get on with things. Okay, looks like YouTube is not censoring me today. That's good to know. One moment, please. Censoring me today. That's good to know. Okay, the audio is good. And, well, okay, since YouTube is apparently not censoring me today, I don't have to share this to Twitter. Isn't that nice? They're getting their shit together, apparently. Okay. So, as usual, I will be first giving my interpretation of the moon, the meaning of the moon in astrology, one's moon sign, and so on and so forth. And then we will be looking up additional information about the moon and analyzing that. And I'll be giving you my interpretation of that as well. And even though we got started a bit late, we should be able to go for about 2 hours or nearly 2 hours, I would say. So, without further ado, take a sip of water here and then we shall begin. So, the moon in astrology, in contrast to the sun, which we looked at last week, that talked so much about our conscious mind, our ego, our self in some cases, the moon is the subconscious. It is the emotions. It is one's feelings. It refers to a much more ephemeral energy, the just sort of passing of one's moods or emotions. You could think of the moon as your mood, or moods come from the moon. That's the sort of word connection there. In terms of what one's moon sign is, the sign that one was born with the moon in, that is going to refer much more to a person's emotional state, again, their subconscious, their subtle motivations. You know, how is this person in a more emotional sense as opposed to their sun sign, which is so much more having to do with the conscious mind and reason and the intellect and that sort of thing. The moon is like, what is more hidden beneath the surface in a person? Now, as far as where the moon likes and does not like being, the moon's home sign is Cancer. So last week we had the sun being at home in Leo, whereas the moon is at home in Cancer. And thus on a zodiac wheel, you have the sign of Cancer with the moon, and then you have right next to that the sign of Leo with the sun. And if you notice, especially with traditional astrology, the planets do branch out from there, and we'll get more into that as we go with more of these episodes. But for example, right before Cancer, you have the sign of Gemini. Right after Leo, you have the sign of Virgo, both ruled by Mercury. Right before Gemini, you have the sign of Taurus. Right after Virgo, you have the sign of Libra, both ruled by Venus. And then it goes on to Mars with Aries and Scorpio. And then it goes to Jupiter with Pisces and Sagittarius. And then finally, it goes to Saturn with Aquarius and Capricorn. So that's an interesting symmetry that we see in traditional astrology using the traditional rulership scheme that I'm sure we will return to from time to time as we analyze these various meanings. So the moon indeed is at home in the sign of Cancer, and so it's going to do very well there. Now, I personally just to give you some more information, I personally get depressed whenever the moon is in Cancer, it seems, as it was in the past couple of days, actually. It just moved into Leo yesterday afternoon. I get depressed whenever the moon's in Cancer, and I'm not completely sure why. I have some theories as to why, but these things affect everyone differently. Like the sign of Cancer, Cancerian energy can be like moody and melancholy. Again, boys and girls, that is not to say that all Cancers are automatically moody and melancholy. That's not how astrology works. But just generally speaking, pure Cancerian energy does tend to be very moody and melancholy. And so I think a number of people might feel kind of depressed or at least somewhat sad or discouraged or stuff like that when the moon does go through Cancer. I know I certainly do. It really kind of sucks, but nevertheless, the moon is said to do very well in Cancer because that's its home sign. It's very comfortable with that energy. So, for example, if you are using electional astrology, getting the moon in Cancer would be one of the best placements that you could get in electional astrology, particularly if you're using it as the ruler of the ascendant, or if you get it in an angular house, that would be the first, fourth, seventh, or 10th house. But so you have that. The second best place for the moon is a sign of Taurus. And so for all of my afflictions, some of which we went over last week, when it comes to my moon sign, I actually have the moon in Taurus, by the way. So that's one area of my chart that is quite good. The moon is exalted in Taurus. It does very well in Taurus because it is very much comfortable with that Taurian energy. Now, why might this be? Well, the moon is our emotions. And it's always like seeking security. Taurus is a very stable, secure, literally fixed earth sign. And so in Taurus, the moon finds that security that it is seeking. And so that's quite nice. A lot of Taurus moon people like myself, you'll find tend to, even if they're very emotional, have some measure of like either control over their emotions or maybe even better, which would be like more of knowing how to sort of make peace with their emotions. It's not that they won't be emotional. Oh, they may very well be emotional. I know I'm emotional as all, I don't know what. I'm surprised I haven't been like diagnosed with something other than an anxiety disorder. But I also noticed that I'm very good at like managing that extremely powerful emotion. And of course, there's other things unique to my chart that make me the way I am, but I'm just using myself as an example because it's relevant here. Now, the moon, on the other hand, does not do so well in the sign opposite of Taurus, which is Scorpio. And again, I can't recall, is it in its fall or detriment? I'll look that up in a moment. I don't know everything, people. But the moon does not do well in the sign of Scorpio because Scorpio energy is very complex. It likes to sort of complexify things. And the moon, I think, feels very scattered in the midst of that. Plus the sign of Scorpio is very, very deep and gets into like uncomfortable realities and uncomfortable truths and stuff like that. And the moon, which is seeking security and is very emotional, picks up that energy, that sort of dark, viscerally intense energy, and feels very uncomfortable in that state. So if you're, at least as far as I know, if you're ever using electional astrology, you want to steer away from elections with the moon in Scorpio. And again, that's not to say that people who have the moon in Scorpio are somehow inherently born with some kind of like disability or defect or anything like that. Again, astrology doesn't work like that. I want to drive the point home as much as I can. But so just to satisfy my curiosity, is the moon technically in its fall or its detriment in Scorpio? Let's ask Google. Hey, Google, in what sign is the moon in its fall?
According to the astrology place, moon in fall, Scorpio.
Okay. So I don't know. Does the moon not have a sign that it's a detriment? I mean, when I looked this stuff up, I didn't find anything about that. I just found that the moon does not do well in Scorpio. So that is what we have there. So that's my brief overview of moon in astrology. And so now let's go to some additional resources and read and analyze those and see what we think of that. So just give me a moment here. I should also mention the moon in astrology has traditionally also been associated with a lot of, how do I say this? Sort of almost scary or supernatural or like metaphysical stuff at times as well. It's also very reflective. It reminds me of Neptune in many ways, the planet Neptune, which we only have here in modern times in modern astrology. I think Neptune almost took on some of the significations of the moon that were originally only assigned to the moon in traditional astrology. But now we have kind of both the moon and Neptune. Definitely not the same energy. I don't want anyone thinking that. But there are interesting similarities. Like Neptune is reflective energy. The moon is also reflective energy. Neptune sort of takes things in and then pushes them back out. The moon does that as well. The moon's very receptive. The sun, in contrast to the sun, which we analyzed last week, the sun's very assertive. It puts things out into the world. But the moon is receptive and takes things in and then reflective. And so the moon will like put things out in a sense, but it's only reflecting what has been sort of cast into it, if that makes sense. Think of like the literal physical moon in the sky, how it looks. Its light is only that which is reflected by the physical sun. In purely astronomical, not even astrological terms, the moon just reflects the light of the sun. It does not emit its own light. And that tells you something about the nature of the moon in astrology. All right, so let's go to cafeastrology.com and analyze what they have to say. The moon in astrology is the ruler of Cancer. The moon represents our deepest personal needs, our basic habits and reactions, and our unconscious. Where the sun acts, the moon reacts. How do we instinctively react or respond to problems? What do we feel we need for a sense of security? Look to the moon in your natal chart for answers. The moon is associated with the mother and with feminine energy in general. The moon is both our inner child and our inner mother. It is responsive, receptive, and reflective. The moon is our spontaneous and instinctual reactions. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Whereas what we had last week with the sun so often represents the father in one's chart, the moon so often represents the mother in one's chart. So if you want to know more about your relationship with your mother, look to your moon sign and also the house placement of your moon. Just as the moon circles, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. think this article was trying to say just as the moon circles the earth. I don't know. But let's see, in a symbolically protective manner and reflects, yeah, that's what it was trying to say. Just as the moon circles the earth in a symbolically protective manner and reflects the sun's light, the moon in our chart shows how we protect ourselves, as well as make ourselves feel secure, comfortable, and safe. We can also think of the moon as that which gives us animation. It rules rhythmic ebb and flow of activity and energy. The moon is a mediator between the inner world and the outer world. While the sun is rational, the moon is irrational. Habitual behaviors and prejudices are ruled by the moon. Prejudices may not be acted out as our sun may censor them, but the moon rules our spontaneous reactions and feelings. Why do I keep feeling, speaking of such things, like my microphone is somehow off center? You can't see it in front of me, but all right. For some of us, our moons seem to drive our personalities more than the sun does. This is particularly true if the moon is in a water sign, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, or if it is conjunct an angle in the chart near the ascendant, descendant, fourth house cusp, or 10th house cusp. For true happiness in life, it is wise to neither give your moon too much nor too little importance in your life. Yeah, and that's very true. And some other ways of having a prominent moon in your chart, like that would make you identify much more with your moon sign than other signs per se, would be if there are major aspects to it from other planets, and especially if there's a lot of them. So if there are squares, oppositions, sextiles, trines, especially conjunctions to other, like one or more other planets or strong points in the chart, as this was mentioning, that'll strengthen your moon. If your moon is conjunct your ascendant, your descendant, your midheaven, or your IC, that'll make it very strong. Trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting. Of course, if it's conjunct, even other points like the north or south node, I would say, if it's conjunct Chiron, things of this nature, you know. And of course, the more major aspects slash conjunctions or whatever, the stronger the energy of your moon. All right. I feel that Grant Louis, in Astrology for the Millions, offered the most evocative description of the moon when he wrote the following, quote, "When you, quote, know what you mean but you can't say it," end quote, "it is your moon that knows it and your sun that can't say it. Thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears are the thoughts of your moon's nature. The wordless ecstasy, the mute sorrow, the secret dream, the esoteric picture of yourself that you can't get across to the world, or which the world doesn't comprehend or value. These are the products of the moon in your horoscope. When you are misunderstood, it is your moon nature, expressed imperfectly through the sun sign, that you feel is betrayed. When you know what you ought to do, but can't find the right way to do it, it is your moon that knows and your sun that refuses to react in harmony. Also, when you, quote unquote, don't know why I said that, it was your moon expressing in spite of your sun, if you are inwardly satisfied with the involuntary speech, or the sun expressing against the will of the moon, if you are displeased with what has slipped out. And so there you can see in a very simplified way some of the inner conflict that we all basically have as a result just of being human. So often it can be shown astrologically as a conflict between your sun and your moon. I'll also mention here, even though this gets into some advanced stuff, that the moon is particularly interesting when working with the technique of secondary progressions, which is a predictive astrology technique. Which I'm not going to get deep into this right now because it wouldn't be appropriate. But when you're working with secondary progressions and you notice, how do I put this? When your secondary progressed moon is moving into a square and then an opposition with your natal moon, I believe it is. Geez, I need to brush up on this, but basically that I think there's actually different opinions on whether it should be your natal moon, your natal sun, all this stuff, but basically that first phase is considered a phase of growth, and then when it comes back around, that's considered a phase of like releasing or letting go or things slowing down or that sort of nature. It's like an active phase and then a less active phase, just like we sort of see every month with the phase of the moon, the normal phase of the moon. It waxes, the energy builds up, and then it wanes, the energy sort of decreases or releases. And we have these cycles. But yeah, I need to don't quote me on the secondary progressions thing of what the progressed moon is supposed to be in a square opposition to, because I need to brush up on that, to be honest. All right. Things you know without thought, intuitions, hunches, instincts, are the products of the moon. Modes of expression that you feel are truly your deepest self belong to the moon. Art, letters, creative work of any kind, sometimes love, sometimes business. Whatever you feel is most deeply yourself, whether or not you are able to do anything about it in the outer world, is the product of your moon and of the sign your moon occupies at birth. And that is the end of that quotation, that rather long quotation. With respect to the other luminary, the sun, the moon infuses the past into our lives through the feelings, while the sun reflects the present or the quote unquote here and now. When we are quote unquote acting out our moon, we are imaginative, creative, intuitive, sentimental, adaptable, introspective, and protective. On the negative side, we can be moody, restless, and irrational. In the natal chart, the position of the moon by sign shows how we emote and respond to our environment, as well as our instinctual habits, especially in our homes and in private. By house, the moon's position shows which areas of life we feel the most at home or comfortable. And that's it for that article. Let me see if I can flesh this out a little bit more, though. So, as they're saying, I'm going to use myself as an example because that's the easiest thing I know how to do. When it says the position of the moon by sign shows how we emote and respond to our environment. So, for example, my moon, as I mentioned, is in the sign of Taurus. And so, how do I emote and respond to my environment? I seek stability and simplicity in my environment, like the energy of Taurus. Taurus, a very stable, simplistic sign, also very hardworking and sensual sign. Taurus likes nice things. And that is indeed, for me, having the moon in Taurus, how I respond to my environment. I like it simple. I like it stable, very much want security, and I like it nice. I like things to be nice and neat around me. I wouldn't quite say I'm a neat freak. It's not quite that extreme, but I do like things to be nice. Now, when this article says by house, the moon's position shows which areas of life we feel the most at home or comfortable. To again use myself as an example, I have my moon in my 8th house, which is a bit intense. But the 8th house, a house having to do with issues surrounding mortality and death, a house having to do with the dark side of life, with the unconscious realms, and also some other things too, but I'm going to use these as an example because they're most appropriate. Indeed, I'm almost obsessed with the occult and diving into the unconscious and deep sort of dark stuff like that. I indeed feel most at home in the dark side of life, in that 8th house energy, as this article says, because I have my moon in the 8th house. So that is what we have there. So you can simply look at your chart. Even if you know very little about astrology, just look at the sign and the house of your moon in your chart. Look up what that sign and that house mean, and you'll get a lot of insight into yourself just by looking at your moon sign. So next we have astrologyzone.com. Let's analyze what they have to say. The moon. The moon drives your deepest feelings, the fine tuning of your character, your instinct and intuition, your emotions, and your reactions. The moon also rules your private life, especially your home. Since the moon is feminine in nature, it rules your mother and how you perceive her, and does the same for any other important females in your life, including your wife, girlfriend, or a female boss, your grandmother, girlfriend, or wife. They mentioned like half of those twice. If the sun represents where you are going, the moon signifies where you've been. More specifically, the moon rules your history, your background, emotional development, and your roots. Your ability to get in touch with your feelings is dictated by planetary aspects to the moon. The dynamics surrounding the moon can also indicate the state of your health, especially if you are female. The moon rules the sign of Cancer, the stomach and breasts, and the light of night, obviously moonlight. The moon, which takes approximately 28 days to orbit the zodiac, spends 2 to 3 days in each sign every month. That's another thing worth mentioning about the moon when looking at the energy of the current moment, or sort of like basic predictive astrology, is whether you're using an ephemeris or you're going to a website, like I highly recommend planetwatcher.com, since it's nice and simple. You can look at where the moon just is right now and its relationship to other planets. And again, just with a very like rudimentary understanding of astrology, just memorize the major aspects and sort of the basic meanings of the other planets. You can get a feel for what the energy is right now. For example, we can go right now. I'll just pull it up right on my computer. We can go to planetwatcher.com and we can see that the moon is at exactly 14 Leo 49, so 14 degrees and 49 minutes of Leo. And it just, funny enough, it just trined the sun probably like less than half an hour ago or something, which is currently at 14 Aries 31. So the moon in a harmonious trine to the sun in Aries right now is basically harmonizing our emotions with our conscious mind and creating a lot of easy energy, an easy connection between, like, say, our emotions and our ego, or our feelings and our ability to reason things out. And so the world in general is feeling that right now. Now, it is true, since we're in the middle of a crazy fucking pandemic that is killing people all over the world, we're maybe not going to feel as much harmony as we would during normal times, of course, and that pandemic is symbolized astrologically as well by the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that perfected only a couple of months ago. But since it is such a slow-moving aspect, its effects are lasting basically this whole year and was building up last year and even a lot the year before that. But within that larger framework, that larger cycle, today, we are feeling more harmony than usual around this time. So everything, of course, in astrology must be considered holistically. It must be considered in context. And that is what we must do. Even though in a study like this, well, it's weird when working with astrology. When learning astrology, you have to first learn the parts, and then you have to learn how to put them together into a whole. It's just, there's no other way you can really learn it, unfortunately. But anyway, let us continue. The dynamics surrounding the moon can also indicate the state of your health. Oh, wait, no, I think we read that already. Okay, here we go. Every month there is a new moon. Depending where it falls in your horoscope, it shows which areas would be favored for new beginnings. A full moon arrives 2 weeks after the new moon, depending on where that moon falls in the chart. It could be time to reap the benefits or consequences of earlier actions. Okay, and that is it for that article. Next up, we have the Wikipedia article for the moon. And for those out there, those wiser meisters or whatever that might want to say, what if there's false information on any of these sites? Well, I, as an experienced astrologer, am here to expose that false information for you. It's part of what my role is here. All right, so here we go. Moon. It shows a picture here, and it says Luna or Diana wearing a crescent moon crown and driving her ox-drawn chariot on the Parabiago plate, 2nd to 5th centuries AD. I'll show you that little image right there. Of course, as usual, it doesn't want to focus for us, but give it a moment. Yes, indeed. There we have that idea of Luna or Diana, the moon goddess. All right, so it says the moon is the ruling planet of Cancer and is exalted in Taurus. In classical Roman mythology, the moon was Luna, at times identified with Diana. The moon is large enough for its gravity to affect the Earth, stabilizing its orbit and producing the regular ebb and flow of the tides. The lunar days syncs up with its orbit around Earth in such a manner that the same side of the moon always faces the Earth, and the other side, known as the far side of the moon, faces towards space. Astrologically speaking, the moon is associated with a person's intuition, emotional makeup, unconscious habits, rhythms, memories, moods, and their ability to react and adapt to those around them. It is associated for some with the mother, maternal instincts or the urge to nurture, the home, the need for security and the past, especially early experiences in childhood. The first century poet Manilius described the moon, or Luna, as melancholic. In medicine, the moon is associated with the digestive system, stomach, breasts, the ovaries, and menstruation, which does occur on a monthly cycle, and the pancreas. Despite Manilius' assignation, the moon is commonly associated with the phlegmatic humor. It ruled the animal spirits. In modern astrology, the moon is the primary native ruler of the 4th house, but traditionally it had its joy in the 12th house. Yes, 4th house being that of the home and family, one's roots, ancestors, where one comes from, also one's land and country. And the 12th house being the house of isolation, the unconscious imprisonment, being alone, mental illness, hidden enemies. Am I forgetting anything? Probably, but that's the 12th house in a nutshell. Why do I feel like the oh shit, I'm sorry if that made a loud noise. I feel like the color temperature is just really off right now, and it's just driving me crazy. That's probably my moon reacting. All right. The moon, or Luna, is associated with Monday. The word Monday comes from the Old English word for moon day or moon's day. Yes, indeed. And in Romance languages, the name for Monday comes from Luna, e.g. Luni in Romanian, Lundi in French, Lunes in Spanish, and Lunedi in Italian. Yes, indeed. So we mentioned this briefly last week, the planetary rulerships of the days of the week. And indeed, Monday really being Moon Day. And now, you see, I am a bit skeptical about this idea of planetary rulerships of the days of the week because I question, like, okay, where does the astronomical correspondence that astrology pretty much inherently relies upon come from for the days of the week? But when we consider that basically all reality is psychological and synchronistic and all that, there's a good chance that there's inherent applicability. So Monday is said to, with it being ruled by the moon, set the emotional tone for the week ahead. And is said to indeed be a day where our emotions can get kind of activated, I guess. It makes it appropriate, though, for exploration of the emotions or just like emotional activities. I would also say, with the moon's association with things that are a bit strange or out there or subjective, that it makes for good reason as to why I have decided to start a new mini series every Monday evening on this channel. So you can look forward to that. Now, I'm going to make sure that when I bumped the microphone a little bit ago, it didn't mess up the sound. One moment, please. The microphone a little bit ago. Okay, the sound is good. Now, let us continue with the moon. Dante Alighieri associated the moon with the liberal art of grammar. In Chinese astrology, the moon represents yin, the passive and receptive feminine life principle. In Indian astrology, the moon is called Chandra or Soma and represents the mind, queenship, and mother. That's interesting, Soma, because isn't that like another word for like the body or something? You have things that are somatic. I'm pretty sure it is. Interesting. The north lunar node, called Rahu, and the south lunar node, called Ketu, are considered to be of particular importance and are given an equal place alongside the 7 classical planets as part of the 9 Navagraha. Yeah, that's another important thing to mention just briefly in connection with the moon, which we're going to do a whole separate episode on this eventually on the nodes. But yes, the north and south node of the moon, which I still to this day do not fully understand this, and I probably should take the time to freaking memorize it. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the north and south nodes of the moon have to do with where the plane or ecliptic of the orbit of the moon around the Earth meets the plane or ecliptic of the orbit of the Earth around the sun, I think. Here, let's see if Google can help us out with this. Hey, Google, what is the north node in astrology?
According to Elite Daily, your north and south nodes are the points where the moon's orbit and the plane of the ecliptic converge during the time you were born. Together, they tell the story of your soul's journey through every life you've lived so far.
Okay, well, that's kind of a summary, I guess. Both parts of that are a summary where it says they tell the story of your soul's journey through every life you've lived so far. That's that's one interpretation. There's numerous interpretations of the meaning of the nodes. I tend to think of like the north node as indicative of one's life purpose and also what one has to work towards to achieve in one's life. And that is in contrast to the south node, which is representing what one automatically puts out into the world and also what one tends to like release and let go of. Can also be theoretically at least an area that sort of drains energy, I guess. And the north and south nodes, in some interpretations or systems or whatever, are thought to be indeed connected to one's past lives, like other lives. And I believe that the astrologer Stephen Forrest gets into that a lot. Well, I know he gets into like past lives through astrology a whole hell of a lot. I forget how much he uses the nodes. But if you're interested in that kind of material, Stephen Forrest is like top-notch astrologer. In fact, I have his book, The Book of Pluto, which I've read in full by now, and he's incredible at what he does. Definitely one of the best astrologers I've ever come across. So highly, highly recommended. All right. So that's it for that article. Next, we have astrostyle.com. Let us burn and observe. Planets and astrology, the moon. Security check. The moon shows what you need in order to feel at home in the world and in your relationships. According to astrology, La Luna depicts the emotional forecast for your horoscope. The ever-shifting moon has a powerful influence on planet Earth. It directs the tides and stabilizes our climate by regulating the wobble of the Earth on its axis. In astrology, the moon plays a similar role, directing the flow of our emotions and our internal temperatures. It's interesting to consider that idea with the moon of how it literally affects the water here on Earth. And we know scientifically that our bodies are roughly 70% water, and water in astrology and other like occult disciplines is very much the emotions, very much associated with one's emotions. And so one could almost theorize, at least, that there may even be an almost physical effect of the physical moon on our emotions as it affects the theoretically, mind you, the water in our bodies. So continuing, it says, someone with an Aries moon, for example, may heat up quickly, while a Scorpio moon is like an active volcano, their feelings simmering below the surface until they suddenly erupt. Every heavenly body is said to, quote-unquote, rule a zodiac sign. The moon governs Cancer, the sign associated with women, the mother, the home, and our general sense of security. Understanding your moon sign can help you navigate relationships with all the ladies in your life. It may also define how well you get along with mother. A Gemini moon, for example, may be BFFs with your mom, while a Taurus moon may long for stability and consistency from dear mama. Oh, geez. That's almost slightly embarrassing, as I have already said, I'm a Taurus moon. The moon changes signs every 2.5 days, transiting through all 12 zodiac signs in 27.5 days. Our changeable moods are governed by Luna, the Roman goddess who represents the moon. Yeah, there's something else I want to say about the transiting moon. Oh, yeah. So, indeed, like looking at the current sign that the moon is in, you can get a feel for the general mood of a given couple of days, and also looking at how it aspects planets in your own chart. Now, I mentioned earlier that it seems like every time the moon goes through Cancer, I get depressed. Now, I'm going to expand on that a little bit just to give you an idea of what you can do when looking at how the moon affects your own charts. So, when the moon goes through Cancer, I have a bunch of Capricorn placements, you see. Mercury, Uranus, Neptune. I'm not doing these in order for some reason, but whatever. The Sun and Saturn. Or you could say going from the beginning of the sign to the end, I have Uranus, Neptune, the Sun, Saturn, and Mercury all in Capricorn. So that's the sign opposite of Cancer. So when the moon goes through Cancer, it forms these rather difficult oppositions to all of my Capricorn stuff, you could say. And that is therefore stressful for me as someone who has so much in the sign of Capricorn. Furthermore, whenever it is in the sign of Aries, when the moon is in Aries, it forms these stressful squares to all of my Capricorn stuff. And I notice that when the moon is in Aries, I don't feel depressed, but I just tend to feel very agitated, or things are just plain difficult. Things just tend to go wrong when the moon's in Aries for me, unfortunately. Theoretically, this should also be true when the moon is in Libra, but to take this to yet another level, I find that when the moon is in Libra, this is not so. But the reason for this is probably the fact that Libra is inherently a sign that is seeking harmony and is also, how do I put this? The energy of Libra is much more compatible with the energy of Capricorn than other signs that square each other. And there's different reasons for that. It's kind of hard to get into all that. God, how do I simplify this? On a very basic level, you could say, well, for one reason for that would be that Capricorn likes things very orderly and in structure, whereas Libra likes things very balanced and in harmony. And you can see how those two preferences are fairly similar. There's a lot of overlap there. And so you have to take that into consideration. Thus, therefore, the point being, when the moon is in Libra, even though it squares all my Capricorn stuff, it tends to be all right for me. Now, in your own chart, if there's a sign that you have a lot of planets in, say you have what is called a stellium, which is typically considered 3 or more planets in the same general area, like in the same sign, then whenever the moon is in the sign opposite that, forming an opposition to those planets, things may be a bit rough for you. And whenever it's in a sign squaring that, things may also be a bit rough. But again, you have to take, some of these other factors into consideration. Like for me, when the moon's in Libra, even though it squares my Capricorn stuff, I still tend to do just fine. On the other hand, whenever the moon forms easier aspects like trines or sextiles to, say, a part of the chart where you have a lot of planets, you'll tend to find more harmony. Like, let me think here. Well, I would say especially whenever the moon is in Taurus, probably maybe more than any other sign, whenever the moon goes through Taurus, I tend to feel very nice, very stable. One, because the moon just likes being in Taurus, but two, because when the moon's in Taurus, it forms harmonious trines to all of that Capricorn stuff that I have. And so again, that's something you can look for in your own chart. And if some of you might want to say to me, well, I don't have like any one sign that has a bunch of stuff, so what do I do? What do I look for? I would say in that case, this would be true even if you do have a stellium or whatever. This would be true no matter what. Look for points in your chart that are most prominent, especially, I would say, the ruler of your ascendant, if you know what that is, and even the point of your ascendant, your sun, if it's prominent, or basically any planet, if it's prominent, if there's a lot of aspects to it. Look for basically any strong point in your chart. And then when the moon forms positive aspects to that point, or easier aspects, if you want to use a modern terminology, which is trines or sextiles, expect, more harmonious, easier energy for you on those days. And then when it forms more difficult aspects like squares or oppositions, you expect some challenges around that time. All right, so we've spent enough time on that. I know this is astrology basics, but I want to give as much information as possible, in case we have maybe some somewhat more advanced students of astrology check this out. I don't know. I mean, anyone's free to check these out, but I'm trying to focus on the basics here, so beginners to astrology can learn it. Okay, where the hell were we? The moon is often thought of as the counterpart to the sun. El Sol is expressive, while La Luna is receptive. The sun's energy radiates outward, while the moon processes all that heat and energy coming our way. What pushes your buttons? Where are you most sensitive? And how much emotion do you reveal? A measured Capricorn moon may view feelings as something to be controlled, while a compassionate Pisces moon may have hashtag no filter and weep only at a moment's notice. Yeah, another thing to consider when you're looking up birth charts and you're trying to determine what someone's moon sign is. So it's always ideal in astrology, of course, to have someone's exact time and location that they were born, not just the date that they were born. But if you don't know the exact time a person was born, but you know their birthday, you know the date, you just don't know the time or say the location. But basically, the time here would be the most relevant to the point I'm about to make. You know the date, but you don't know the time. Put 12 p.m. for the time on that date and know that the moon will be up to 6 degrees before or 6 degrees after whatever point it is at 12 p.m. Now, it is still ideal, of course, to know the location that the person was born, or at least the general location. So you have the time zone. So you know that when you put in 12 p.m., it is actually what 12 p.m. was for them in their time zone. Otherwise, depends what you're using, but you may have to adjust the time for their time zone. Or if you don't even know the location, and if it could be anywhere on the globe, then that becomes problematic. But if you even have like a range of time zones, like say they were born somewhere in North America, then you can sort of adjust that 6 degrees before, 6 degrees after at 12 p.m. accordingly. So that's a way you can usually figure out what someone's moon sign is without knowing the exact time they were born, but not always. Do you need a lot of verbal reassurance, Scorpio moon? Or do you feel loved when people encourage us to take risks and shine, Leo moon? Can you be comfortable with home on the road, Sagittarius moon? Or do you require a well-appointed sanctuary, Cancer moon? Even the way you save money or build a nest egg can be revealed. Oh, that's weird to put that as one word. I thought egg can was one word. Even the way you save money or build a nest egg can be revealed by the moon's position in your chart. Because the moon changes so rapidly, it's important to know your exact time of birth in order to know your moon sign. Yes, indeed. Then it shows in big letters here, so I guess this must be important. Every moon sign has its own light side, the obvious feelings that we are comfortable with expressing. And then it says in regular text again, because the moon spins on its axis at the same speed that it orbits planet Earth, we can only glimpse half of her from our vantage point down here. There really is a dark side of the moon, and it's not just the trippy name of a Pink Floyd album. This metaphor translates to the moon's role in the chart. Every moon sign has its own light side, the obvious feelings that we are comfortable with expressing. And then there's a dark side, the emotions that creep up and catch up by surprise, ones we may even try to reject within ourselves. Understanding your moon sign can bring a deep sense of self-knowledge, but may also be a lifelong quest for understanding. Psychologist Carl Jung's concept of the shadow definitely corresponds with this. To quote-unquote know thyself is truly a never-ending journey. Discovering the hidden facets of your moon sign is part of that path. Yeah, speaking of Stephen Forrest earlier, I'm aware that he also has a book on the moon specifically and that's actually in my Amazon cart right now. It's a book I definitely plan on reading in the near future, but of course, there's already multiple books I want to get through that I already physically have, and it's like it takes forever to read all this stuff that I want to read. But yeah, hopefully, like sometime within the next year or so, I can buy that book and read it, because if it's anything like his Book of Pluto, I'm sure his Book of the Moon is incredibly like well done and very insightful. So yeah, first I've got to get through the massive Astrology of Personality by Dane Rudyard that I'm about 1/3 of the way through, and it looks like it's going to take me like 5 more months to get through because it's so intense. But it's well worth it. All right. Where were we? In shamanic astrology, the moon even reveals your past life tribe, what core strength you bring into this lifetime. These may be traits that you've mastered and can use resourcefully, but should be mindful of not clinging to them as security blankets. Knowing your moon sign is key to navigating your deepest desires and emotions. While you can't change the moon sign you were born under, you can adjust the dials to help strengthen the positive traits. Here's a helpful guide. Planetary stats: the moon changes zodiac signs every 2 to 3 days. Zodiac sign it rules: Cancer. Day of the week: Monday. The moon governs emotions, receptivity, intuition, security, home, the mother. Yeah, and again, if you want a really easy way to track where the moon and everything else is right now, just do as I do. Go to planetwatcher.com. I mean, yes, I have my advanced astrology software on my computer that I use as well, but I still use planetwatcher.com because it's just such a simple chart of things you can just look at a glance. So I highly recommend it. Special positions of the moon. Domicile: Cancer. The planet's home base, an easy flow if placed here in the chart. Detriment: Capricorn. Oh, really? See, I looked this stuff up before. I did not come across anything about the moon being in detriment in Capricorn. That's interesting. Opposite sign of home base may need to work harder to integrate the planet's energy if placed here in the chart. Okay, I guess I'm just learning right along with you guys, as I've mentioned before, because I literally have not heard of that before, and now I'm going to look it up on Google. Hey, Google, what is the moon's sign of detriment?
Here is information from Wikipedia.
I thought it was going to give me a more specific reading than that. Yeah, it says, well, Wikipedia, but it says detriment in Capricorn. I am embarrassed that I did not know that. I cannot believe I did not know that the moon is in detriment in Capricorn. I knew it was in its fall or whatever in Scorpio, but all right, well, whatever. I'm learning too. Exalted Taurus. The planet's most powerful position indicates ease and added fortune with using the planet's energy if placed here in the chart. Fall Scorpio. Opposite sign to the exalted position can indicate struggles with utilizing the planet's energy if placed here in the chart. Of course, if I were to have guessed originally what the moon sign of detriment would be, I would have guessed Capricorn because it's the opposite sign of Cancer. Like, you can always figure that out by looking at any planet's home sign and sign of exaltation are always going to be opposite to the signs of its detriment and fall, basically. So that's kind of an easy way to memorize that once you start memorizing it. Okay, why did this take me back? Oh, here we go. That's the end of that article. Astrology.com. I don't think we've been there yet today. Planet's moon. The moon, ruler of emotions. Since the moon is the closest quote-unquote planet to Earth, this satellite literally zips around the zodiac, completing its circuit in less than a month. It also touches us more deeply than most planets. As the ruler of the tides, it is fitting that the moon should be the ruler of our emotions. Still waters run deep, making waves, a wellspring of emotion. Yes, our emotions have long been portrayed in terms of the sea, fluid, momentous, churning from within, mood swings, instinct, how we feel about things and how our feelings affect others are all influenced by the moon. Whereas the sun gives us our spirit, it's the moon that gives us our soul. The moon is goddess-like in that it symbolizes mother and the relationship between woman and child. This planet, also known as a luminary, speaks to the women in one's life and their role as nurturer. Fertility, pregnancy, and childbirth are also governed by the moon. We see the moon casting its silvery glow from our earliest moments when we were stroked and caressed by our mother and felt her tender touch. Yes, that is another key thing to consider with the moon is, as is quite fitting with its rulership of Cancer, um, it's having this very nurturing energy and symbolizing like the nurturing in our lives, essentially. So you can kind of look at that. You can look at the sign and house placement of your moon and say, oh, there's something having to do with nurturing energy connected to this sign and to this house placement in your chart. Oh, and speaking of the idea of its connection with pregnancy and fertility, interestingly enough, when you're using the predictive technique of secondary progressions and you're looking at the progressed moon phases, I know this is a bit advanced, but for those who understand this, whenever the moon is in, there's a technical word for this, but I can't remember, but when it's in the point just before a new phase develops, like when it's in the last bit of the waning phase of the progressed moon, those couple of years are so often, from what I have heard anyway, when women will actually go and have their babies. Essentially, they'll get pregnant and have children. Is in those last couple of years, symbolized by the very end of a progressed moon phase, like a whole phase. Hopefully, I'm explaining this. I don't know if I'm explaining this well. I apologize, but I'm doing the best I can. And the reason for that, though, is that when the progressed moon, okay, when you're working with secondary progressions, when the moon is in those like latter phases of the waning cycle, right before a new phase begins, that is naturally a time where one wants to sort of get off by themselves. You know, they want to sort of be alone, sort of retreat from the world, and sort of experience some isolation, essentially. And so you can imagine how that is kind of connected with the idea of pregnancy and fertility and all that, because one has to sort of retreat from the world in order to facilitate that effectively. You know, your attention can't be on all of life's other areas when you're having a child. Like your attention is going to have to go to that child. All right, so where were we? Our emotions manifest themselves through our being and set the tone for our daily lives. The moon is party to this continuum, rendering us vital one moment and fragile the next. We're up and down, naughty or nice, and may laugh wildly or cry at will. Through the moon's energy, we endeavor to reconcile these varied emotions in order to make ourselves complete and one with the world. The moon also helps us see that which we want and to use memory and the past as part of this process. The moon spends roughly 2.5 days in each sign and takes 28 days to circumnavigate the zodiac. It is feminine energy and rules Cancer and the fourth house. All right, and so that is it for that article. Can I get back to the search results, please? here we go. By the way, if I ever find any ideal book excerpts in the various books that I read and study about any of the subjects we talk about, I will, of course, be sure to include those as well in our little classes or whatever you want to consider these. All right, everydayhoroscopes.com. Is that an article about the moon? Or is this just a horoscope site? Never mind, I think it's just a horoscope site. Okay, I guess we have to go on to the next page now. Astrologyanswers.com. Were we there yet today? No, we were not. Okay, here we go. The moon. Astrology quick facts. Glyph, and it shows just a crescent moon. Yeah. Recognizing the moon in astrology is probably about as easy as it gets. The glyph of it is literally just a typical crescent moon symbol. How much more obvious can it get? Ruler of emotions and the subconscious, a sign of dignity, Cancer, sign of detriment, Capricorn, sign of exaltation, Taurus, sign of fall, Scorpio, physical body, stomach, breasts, lymphatic system, digestive system, womb. Changes sign every 2 to 3 days. Astronomy quick facts. Type terrestrial. Length of day 29.5 Earth days. Length of year 354 Earth days. Moons 0. Temperature day 123 degrees Celsius, 253 degrees Fahrenheit. Night negative 233 degrees Celsius, negative 387 degrees Fahrenheit. Holy shit, that is so cold. Color gray. Size 3,474 kilometers in diameter, 3.7 times smaller than Earth. Spins counterclockwise. Rings 0. Year discovered, known by the ancients. Now, I know some of this astronomical stuff may seem irrelevant to our astrological purposes, but I am positing today that actually it is not irrelevant at all, that it is in fact astronomical data that we can interpret symbolically and astrologically to expand our understanding about any given object in astrology. About the moon. The moon is the only cosmic body beyond Earth upon which humans have physically set foot. The Earth and its only moon have been in a long-distance relationship, 384,400 kilometers to be exact, for millions of years. The moon's synchronous rotation, the fact that it rotates at the same rate that it revolves around Earth, means that the same side of the moon faces the Earth all the time. Coupled with the fact that these two bodies' gravitational forces tug on one another, stabilizing each other, the moon will always be Earth's closest and most intimate neighbor. In the natal chart, the moon sign is never far from the sun sign because of its synchronous rotation. The sun and moon signs make up 2 elements of the primal triad. I suppose I should also mention, vis-a-vis the moon's mysterious quality as well, that, and I'm not even sure what to think of this to this day, I really just don't know, but there are those who say that the very existence of the moon as a satellite of Earth doesn't make sense. And because of that, there are those who believe that the moon itself may be artificial. Now, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying I believe that. I don't know what to think of that. I came across that idea and other ideas relating to that many, many years ago. And I don't know, but it's interesting that it has that kind of I guess, weirdness or mystery associated with it. And in astrology, even though it's primarily associated with our emotions, it's also on some level going to be associated with an element of weirdness or strangeness or whatever. And if you want to take this a step further, just in occult disciplines in general, if you look at the moon card in tarot, that is very much associated with weirdness and strangeness. though technically, for the information, or how do I even say this, to provide the best contextual information about this for those out there, the moon card in tarot itself is actually not ruled by the moon. However, it is ruled by Neptune. Not sure what it was ruled by before we discovered Neptune, though. Maybe then it was ruled by the moon. I don't actually know that. But there you have it. It stands to reason that even though there are hundreds, maybe thousands of other moons in the solar system, Earth's moon's proximity to us means it influences humans just as heavily as any of the other full planets. Despite having no water of its own, or an atmosphere, making it unable to host life, the moon's gravity guides the ocean's tides on Earth. Additionally, humans have quote-unquote watered the moon with 20 seas, Maria, 11 bays, Sinus, 3 marshes, Pallas, 20 lakes, Lacus, and 1 ocean, Oceanus. I'm not sure what this is trying to reference here, or how to say it, but there you have it. These quote-unquote bodies of water are actually lunar maria, vast plains of dark volcanic rock that we have assigned rather lyrical names to over the years. You might be familiar with the Sea of Tranquility, Mare Tranquillitatis, where astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed in the Apollo 11 lunar module Eagle on July 20th, 1969. It comes as no surprise, then, that the moon represents the fluidity and sensitivity of human emotion, instinct, and the subconscious. The moon symbolizes the part of you that you see, as astrologer Joanna Martin Wolfolk puts it. In other words, the moon rules the 5 senses and the way you react instinctively to the sensory stimuli of the world around you. The moon sign explains how we react to and receive the world, while the sun represents our initiative and the outward actions we take. Quote, "The sun signifies your individuality," wrote astrologer Evangeline Adams, "and the moon signifies your personality." End quote. The moon part of us guides us as much as the sun part of us, but the world just doesn't see it. Your personality is the result of your emotions and how you interpret the world, which fall under the moon's domain. For example, when you do something for someone because you love them, the other person only sees the action. They do not see the emotions that motivated you to take that action. The moon represents femininity and maternity. While the sun stands for the opposite, masculinity and paternity. Because of this, the moon is indicative of your past, your infancy, childhood, and memory. The placement of the moon in your natal chart can therefore be telling of the nature of your relationship with your mother. All right, and that's it for that article. Okay, so I hate to do this, but I have to take like a 1-minute break. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, I am back. Sorry for the interruption. Now let us resume. This is askastrology.com, and it says Moon Astrology. What is it that makes astrology so intriguing and mystifying? A part of the answer involves how every question that astrology answers about one's personality is accurate right down to the core. The other one goes on to show how so many components in the universe actively contribute for this knowledge to be conceived. As you may already know, astrology works on the movement of celestial bodies around the universe, and their positions are believed to cause or disrupt activities. These celestial bodies, maybe the planets in the solar system, the dwarf planets very few people know about, the sun, and what we will be discussing in the following text, the moon. Moon astrology is an essential part of deriving knowledge through the celestial bodies. Now, I just want to say here that it is my personal thesis, I guess, and that of many other astrologers, especially probably modern astrologers, that the planets and other astrological objects and points and everything do not actually cause anything. It's simply that they are reflective of what is going on within us, as above, so below. And as the Birthday Massacre would say on their latest album, as the universe, so the soul. Because when you, or I should say, if you accept, as I do, that all reality is psychological, then the planetary and other celestial bodies of the universe can not be not that. They cannot be not psychological, if that makes sense. So they reflect what's going on within our psyches, but also within our actual lives. I, again, do not see astrology as only psychological, as is sort of a, I guess, common thing in a lot of modern astrology, it seems. So anyway, moon and astrology. As the universe, so the soul. Love that. I know, right? It's beautiful words in the Birthday Massacre. From their new album Diamonds, which I bought the MP3 version of for $10, like almost a week ago, like 5 days ago or something. I highly recommend it. Or you could just listen to that song for free on YouTube. It's called Flashback. So there you go. All right. In astrology, the moon plays a pivotal role. In strictly personality-based parameters, it is responsible for the soul and emotions at a person. I think it's supposed to say of a person. If one is to look closely, both of these are connected at a deeper level. The soul feeds on emotions and thus enables the body to work. Negative emotions put the soul through trouble, which makes it lose all determination, trying to put the body into self-destruct mode. Thanks, we'll check it out. Cool. You are very welcome. However, if the soul is fed happy emotions like joy and kindness, even compassion, it begins to learn how to give strength and willpower to the body so it can readily achieve its goal. When talking about the zodiac signs, it is important to know that each celestial body has its sign with regards to the position it is in at any given moment. The most commonly interpreted zodiac signs are that sun. However, the moon signs hold a significant position in astrology too. In some cases, the sun and moon signs are even given equal importance when drawing up a sun or moon sign chart. Yeah, something needs to be said about that right now. I think that this article is being too lenient. I would take that a step further. And I would say at this point in my study of astrology, I consider the sun and moon signs just as important as one another, generally speaking, all things being equal. I consider one's moon sign just as powerful and potent as one's sun sign. However, I do have to qualify that by saying that how prominent one is in the chart is going to factor into that as well. Like if there's a lot of stuff that makes a person's sun sign more powerful than the moon, like a lot of major aspects to it, then yes, for that person, the sun will be more powerful. But if there's a lot of things that make one's moon sign more powerful, like a lot of major aspects to it, and then the sun sign, say, has few to no aspects to it, then the moon sign in that individual would, in fact, be far more powerful than even their sun sign. So I do not at all consider the moon as simply some kind of like adjunct to the sun. I consider it just as important as the sun. And in fact, in one text I read at one time, and again, this was just one text, don't take this as guaranteed to be true, but I read that I guess in at least some Eastern astrology, they actually considered the moon sign to be far more important in the way that we here in the West typically consider the sun sign to be. So, take that for what you will. Again, I don't know if that's entirely true, though. I question that source a bit, but it may have some truth to it. I don't know. So yes, an important factor is that the moon moves into a different sign with every 2 to 3 days. This would mean that a Libra born on the 12th of October would not be the same as a Libra born on the 15th of October regarding moon astrology. Well, a Libra born on the 12th of October would not be the same as a Libra born on the 12th of October regarding astrology in general. Let that be considered. People will try to like downplay astrology, or like skeptics will try to say that astrology doesn't have validity because they'll say, oh, well, two people could be of the same sign and be completely different, or maybe they'll even try to get more specific. They'll say, oh, well, two people could be born on the exact same day but be completely different. Yeah, well, two people could be born the exact same day at the exact same second, but even a slight variation in location is going to make for some potentially quite drastic alterations in their astrological makeup. And furthermore, no one is saying, well, I guess some people are saying, but I think most astrologers would agree that one's astrological chart is not determining every detail of one's life down to the finest little texture or whatever. In fact, well, I have some different theories on this, but I tend to think of it as more like our astrological chart shows the general path we will take, and then we have some element of free will or some element of individual agency to sort of fill in gaps of that, to fill in the details. Like our astrology shows the general path that we take, and then we fill in the details of that general framework. But again, I'm open to different ideas about that. I mean, who am I to say for sure that that's how it is? Maybe everything is fated. Maybe every single thing we do is literally completely out of our control. How would we actually know? So I'm open to that possibility as well, though I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it, but I'm open to it. Okay. What are moon phases? Before we move on to discuss the specific role of the moon in astrology, we need to know the basic principles that govern the moon and its orbit around the Earth. As you may have noticed so many times yourself, the moon does not have a constant shape when viewed from the Earth like the sun. The moon keeps changing. And thus the moon's changeability reflects the inherent changeability of our emotions, which is so much of what the moon is all about. So, and this site shows a little chart here just of the typical moon phases, going from new to crescent, first quarter gibbous, full gibbous, last quarter crescent new. And I'll just show that here briefly. But the question is it going to focus for us? Okay. Wow, this chart, that's weird. This chart actually has an error in it. I must let you all know. It says waning when it should say waxing, and it says waxing when it should say waning. The moon is waxing when it is moving towards a full moon, and it's waning when it's moving away from the full moon, when it's moving towards a new moon. It waxes and then it wanes. Wow, this site needs to, I don't know, get it together. Sometimes it is a crescent, at other times only half of it is visible. On other nights, you can see a full moon, which has its own set of mythical stories too, like werewolves waking up in sight of the full moon. However, full moon astrology is different. This constant changing of how the moon appears to be are called the phases of the moon. Another thing that you can check out through the technique of secondary progressions with the moon, for those who know how to do that, is you can look at what house of your chart is your progressed moon currently moving through, and you can know that that is going to represent a particular cycle. Like right now, my secondary progressed moon is in the sign of Gemini, which is my 9th house. And so I know that I'm in a cycle right now that is very much having to do with things like education and higher learning, spirituality, belief systems, ideals. And I think I don't know, I could look it up right now, but last I checked, I think I'm roughly 2/3 through this cycle. And it's been interesting since it began. I've noticed myself really getting in touch a lot more with my belief systems and stuff like that. So again, for those interested in predictive astrology, that's yet another way you can use the moon through the predictive timing technique known as secondary progressions in astrology. If you want to learn more about that, look up here on YouTube the Astrology podcast, Secondary Progressions, because that is where I first learned of it, and it's very informative. All right, so where were we? Another phenomenon that is important to discuss here is that of the supermoon. Although supermoon astrology is not very common, the concept is that a full moon reaches the form of the supermoon when it is at a point closest to the Earth in its orbit. What causes moon phases? This would require you to recall your 5th grade science textbook. All of us did learn about the solar system, the moon, and all. What we need to take from it right now is the fact that the Earth revolves around the sun and the moon revolves around the Earth. Another concept you would need to recall is that of how the day and night come into being. It is a result of the sun only shining on one half of the Earth at any given time. Similarly, the sun can only illuminate one half of the moon at any given time. Since the moon is not a light source in itself, we can only see the part of the moon illuminated by the sun, reflecting its light. The rest of the trick is done by the Earth's shadow on the moon, and voila, the 8 phases of the moon come into being. A moon phases diagram might do a better job at explaining this than just plain text. Moon sign horoscope. To dive even deeper into how the position of the moon affects the zodiac signs, astrologers have combined detailed accounts for each. This knowledge is also known as moon sign astrology. Before we move on to that, an interesting thing to note is the astrology moon sign, which is sometimes also called the moon symbol or glyph. It is the most common way to represent a moon, as is done so by drawing a crescent. It goes on to show how the moon is a lens that takes light from the sun to project it to the Earth. Of course, in reality, All it is doing is reflecting the light to make itself visible to Earth. Let us now look into each of the moon's zodiac signs. So let it also be known, by the way, that the idea of sect comes into play when it comes into how powerful your moon is going to be in your chart. And that's simply were you born during the day or the night. If you were born during the night, as I was, your moon sign is going to tend to be stronger. That's one of the main factors that will indicate that it's stronger. If you were born during the day, your moon sign is going to tend to be weaker, or your moon itself in your chart is going to tend to be weaker, whereas your sun would tend to be stronger during the day. So pretty easy to consider there. However, just remember that is only one factor of multiple factors you should consider as to how strong or not strong your moon is, your sun is, or whatever. All right, so we could look into this next part on the site about what the moon in different signs is like. Of course, I was planning on saving such information for future streams, but you know what? We're an hour and a half into this, so let's get into some let's go a step further now. And just look at these real quick. There's a paragraph for each sign. Aries moon astrology. Like we discussed previously, your moon sign is determined by what zodiac sign the moon was traveling through when you were born. As is the case, people with an Aries moon sign had the moon traveling through Aries at the time of their birth. This has a significant impact on your spiritual self, how you perceive the world, and greatly shapes how you intend to deal with the future. An Aries moon sign makes your inner self just like the zodiac, fiery, energetic, and passionate. It won't be wrong to say that an Aries moon sign makes one very determined in their quest of life. Okay, I'm going to qualify that because I quite frankly feel like that's not like a thorough enough description. Someone born with an Aries moon is going to be someone whose emotions tend to be very impulsive, very much wanting to act quickly, motivated. You know, they're going to be someone who is, unless it's contradicted by other things in the chart, who's very likely to assert themselves, to get out there and do things, to take action. They may be quick to anger, especially if there's other things in the chart backing that up. But yeah, I think that'll give you a much better idea of someone with an Aries moon. Oh, and they would also tend to be someone who maybe isn't the most sensitive to other people's emotions and will kind of tend to just say things almost without thinking, or just say like what's on their mind. Even if maybe for other people, they would feel like that's a bit insensitive or crossing the line or whatever. Taurus moon astrology. Yay, that's me. Here we go. The moon sign calendar deals with all the zodiac signs falling into the moon's positions. To calculate the moon sign, yeah, we know this stuff. A person with the moon sign of Taurus gets to have the very qualities of the sign in combination with the sun sign. These people are elegant in their dealings, yet have a clear aim of ensuring security all the while. You can be safe in assuming that these people steal the show with their manners and appearance, and they never take it for granted. Wait, that these people steal the show with their manners and appearance, and they never take it for granted. That's an interesting interpretation. I would say that one with a Taurus moon is someone who's going to be very interested in security, for one thing, especially emotional security, but also like a security in their immediate environment. They will be willing to sacrifice things that most people would not be willing to sacrifice for the sake of security. I would say there could be a risk of isolation here, isolating oneself too much with the Taurus moon. But generally speaking, it is a sign of the moon's exaltation. So it is a good placement for the moon. Again, generally speaking, we always have to interpret these things in context. It's going to make for one who tends to have a lot of stability with their emotions. And again, like I mentioned earlier, not necessarily someone who is not emotional, I again speak from experience. I'm a Taurus moon myself, and I'm extremely emotional, but I am also good at like sort of controlling or channeling that emotion rather than letting it sort of I don't know, go off the wall or out of control or whatever. All right. Gemini moon astrology. For the people having Gemini as their moon sign, worry not. You will find a way out of nearly every sticky situation, thanks to your wit and excellent communication skills. These people love to talk to everybody. Some might find it annoying. For others, it is a skill that is one of the most valued in the entire world. This chapter also gives the Moon Gemini people a particular skill to be able to relate to everybody and understand better as to what the next person is trying to say. If that is not a useful quality to have, we don't know what is. Yeah, I would say a Gemini Moon person would be good at having a more like intellectual, mental understanding of the emotions, both their own emotions and other people's emotions. Um, it would make them kind of, how do I say this? A more playful person, but in a subtle way because it's the moon. Unless the moon's very prominent in their chart, then maybe a more overtly playful person. But yeah, that sort of curiously intellectual Gemini energy would color their emotions, their instincts, their subtle motivations, things of that nature. Cancer moon astrology. Moon Cancer people are unique. It in no way means not that Sun Cancer people aren't. Hear us out. People with Cancer as their moon sign are highly caring and compassionate towards others. This great quality is perhaps one of the rarest among zodiac signs, which tend to benefit others more than it does the person of the sign itself. Friends, family, and all people close come first for a person born when the moon is in Cancer. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Someone with the moon in Cancer is going to tend to be emotional. They're going to be very interested in security and wanting security, wanting maybe even a sense of nurturing, especially if the moon is very strong in their chart. Trying to think of some of the people that I've encountered with like the moon in Cancer. Yeah, like even if the person is overtly very intellectual or seemingly stable on the surface, if their moon is in Cancer, at least in my experience, that emotional side of them will play itself out. Like it will make itself known. Though the person at other times may seem to be like cool and collected, or if they're say like their sun sign and like the ruler of their ascendant are in water signs, then they'll just be plain very emotional pretty much all the time. But yeah, moon in Cancer tends to be a rather emotional person, generally speaking, interested in emotional security. All right. Leo moon astrology. We all know Leos to be brave, energetic, and as owners of adventure driven souls. The moon sign of Leo is pretty much the same, except that it represents one's inner side. The key words that describe a Leo moon are expressive, colorful, and loud. Most of the people expect nothing else from a Leo, honestly speaking. With the zodiac sign brandishing a lion, Leos are used to having their way around everything, and this is just how their inner self works. How their inner self works too if the moon is in Leo. Astrologers have worked upon the celestial bodies for so long. What is this article trying to say? I don't. Astrologers, having worked upon the celestial bodies for so long, come up with the conclusion that a moon Leo demands absolute adoration and attention to function properly, and that is just how it usually goes. Yeah, I basically agree with that. People with the moon in Leo tend to like the sign of Leo, want to be in the spotlight. You know, they like having the attention on them, which is weird because I have met so many freaking people in my own personal life with the moon in Leo. Like I attract them like crazy. Also, like Leos in general, but especially people with the moon in Leo. And to varying degrees, you know, some more than others. Again, look at how prominent or not prominent is the moon in the chart. A Leo moon person really likes being in the spotlight, likes having the attention on them, sometimes to the point of what I would consider a bit excess, I guess. Like someone that I knew a few years ago that I don't know anymore, uh, he was almost like egotistical about it. Like he was self-absorbed. Now, that's not going to be your average Leo and Moon person, but that would be like an unhealthy Leo Moon, is getting like self-absorbed and really only being interested in things as they relate to you. It's like, hate to break it to you, but there's a lot of people out there, and you're not the only one who exists in this world. In fact, if you want to take it to a deeper level, other people are reflections of aspects of yourself. So even if you're only concerned about yourself, recognizing that truth, you should, because of that, also be equally concerned about other people. Virgo moon astrology. If the current moon sign falls between August 22nd and September 22nd, then Virgo dominates your inner self. What the actual fuck kind of description is that? I'm sorry, but what? The dates of August 22nd to September 22nd have nothing to do with someone being born during a Virgo moon. That, yes, that describes the range, the typical range of Virgo season, but the moon goes around once a month. That's really weird. I question the integrity of the site, but whatever. That's what I'm here for, to critique these sources. Virgos generally tend to be very specific down to the tiniest detail. Being so thorough is the reason that they find success in lesser tries as compared to others. This drive towards perfectionism right from the very first attempt at anything makes Virgos different from the rest of the pack. There's a little problem, however. This strong drive for perfectionism can sometimes be a cause of neurotic behavior, which is self-destructive. Any Virgos need to avoid being overcharged and always be in control of who they are. Yeah, Virgo moon is going to be someone who typically emotionally probably has an emotional need to be very specific, be very detailed, analyze little things. And yes, it can become a bit of like an OCD kind of thing where they're overly obsessed with the details. And they need to get all the details, all the little details right in order to feel good. Again, the moon is one's feelings. But generally speaking, a Virgo moon is going to be someone who, in an emotional sense, is very like practical and down to earth, and probably sees the emotions of themselves and others in more logical and mental terms. Virgo being an earth sign ruled by an air planet Mercury, thus the energies of earth and air. Libra moon astrology. As any Libra would tell you, it is all about balance. While on the outside, a Libra always tries to make peace with everything and is probably the most compromising person you know of, having Libra as a moon sign is a completely different ballgame. These people are very emotional and always are in need of another person to share their emotions with. The quest for balance within may often lead a Libra to be indecisive as to which side to favor. However, these are one of the most compassionate, kind, and loving people you will ever meet. Yeah, I basically agree with that. I don't really have much to say in addition to that. I haven't really met very many Libra moon people, actually, as I think about it. So anyway, Scorpio moon astrology. Scorpios do tend to have an air of arrogance about them. Oh my. You may even see them boasting about the new shoes they bought and how better they are than yours. However, these are some of the most loyal friends one could ask for, and this quality is specifically enhanced if one is born when the moon is in Scorpio. I've never actually seen that, a Scorpio moon be like all boastful and stuff like that, but I'm not going to discount it either because I'm not even sure I've seen that many Scorpio moons over the years. But yeah, interesting. Another good thing about Scorpios is their decisiveness. They are either with you or against you, clear and simple. This often leads to criticism that they are not diplomatic enough. In the end, it is your choice of who you want to side with. Yeah, a Scorpio moon is going to be someone who feels things very deeply, who has a lot of intense passion for things, and probably tends to get in touch with the dark side of life, maybe sometimes. Well, I guess we could say for better or worse. All right. Sagittarius moon astrology. Ever wondered why a Sagittarius is always smiling and happy? It is because of their positive approach to life. Astrologers find this unending optimism as the biggest strength of a person born when the moon is in Sagittarius. This not only enables them to enjoy life to the fullest at all times, but also finds solutions to problems easily because of not wasting any time in fretting and worrying. Now, who wouldn't want that, huh? Yeah, indeed. Someone with the moon in Sagittarius, generally speaking, is going to have great optimism, a great sense of adventure. They're probably going to have one hell of a sense of humor. It may even seem like too much of a sense of humor. Highly silly. They're going to tend to be like the class clown, especially if they have a very strong moon in Sagittarius. Yeah, very optimistic, jovial, enthusiastic, emotional energy coming from such a person. Again, all things being equal, all things considered. Capricorn moon astrology. People with Capricorn as their moon sign take a high place ahead of all others. This is thanks to the great leadership skills and visionary mindset that is bestowed upon these people, courtesy of the moon in Capricorn. With these skills, Capricorns have done great services the world over. That's all it has to say about moon in Capricorn. I would also add that a Capricorn moon is going to be more likely to have stable emotions and is going to be one hell of a hard worker. I'm pretty sure that Teal Swan's moon sign is Capricorn, for example, though it may be Aquarius, depending on what time of day she was born, but I'm almost certain it's Capricorn based on other traits of her personality. And she's clearly quite the hard worker, very successful woman. Just look her up on YouTube if you need any proof of that. So a Capricorn moon is going to have an instinctual drive to work hard in the way that a Capricorn does. Capricorn energy is all about hard work over a long period of time to achieve something great. Aquarius moon astrology. How many times have you met people who are religiously conservative? Although at times one would appreciate them of how they tend to stick to their values and appreciate their roots, sometimes it is too much to bear, isn't it? This is where the Aquarius moon comes in to help people who are innovative, creative, and welcome the future with open arms. These are the people who lead the front of liberal movements and introduce new concepts to the world that are not just efficient, they are revolutionary. Yeah, an Aquarius moon, indeed, they'll tend to be like that. They'll tend to be unpredictable, very unique people. They may suddenly express their emotions, I would say. And let's see, Aquarius moon. Being yet another air sign, they're going to have a more intellectual or detached view of the emotions in general. And probably instinctively interested in Aquarian subjects, so things that are unique and different, especially a lot of like new agey things, maybe even astrology or tarot. Astrology is very much an Aquarian thing, in fact. It's getting a little bit cold in here, so I'm turning on my heater. Pisces moon astrology. Lastly, a Pisces moon is pretty much like the 12th house, a mystery. Never ever, if you want my advice, associate signs with houses. Never, ever, ever do that. I know people do that, and I'm not going to try to stop you, but I am going to respectfully disagree with that approach and strongly, in the strongest possible terms, recommend anyone who follows my guidance in astrology to not associate signs with houses. This gets to such levels of extreme that at times a Pisces moon might have trouble registering their feelings, meaning that they can't even tell for themselves. However, this doesn't mean that all hope is lost. Pisces moons are still passionate, kind individuals who once figure out what they aim to do in life, who once figure out what they aim to do in life, go on to do wonders. Yeah, I would say that's more or less accurate. A Pisces moon is indeed going to be someone who's like very kind and compassionate, someone who's also likely to be very emotional, sensitive, intuitive, and even psychic. Um, on the more like negative or challenging side, there's the risk of sort of getting lost in that sea of Neptune that rules a sign of Pisces. Like one's moon, one's feelings and emotions, sort of getting lost in the nebulousness and confusion of that Neptunian energy. But other than that, yes, a very kind and compassionate individual is what we would likely have there. All right, so that is finally the end of that article. Do we have time for one more? I think we do. Let's see. Tarot.com. Tarot.com, despite the name, has an article on the moon in astrology. Good. Whereas if you want the moon in tarot, well, I already did that like a year ago, or nearly a year ago or something. So you can look at that up on my channel. I even have a playlist where I analyzed the cards of the tarot, and I'm continuing to do that, in fact. All right. The moon in astrology. The moon is the planet of our inner world, our emotions, reactions, and life patterns. Though not classified as a planet in astronomy, the moon is one of astrology's most important planets. From new to full and back to new again, the moon goes through 8 phases each month, each impacting our overall energy in a different way. There is no more important astrological symbol than the moon. She is mother, home, roots, food, family, needs, feelings, and habits, and unconscious and instinctual responses to life. Well, I don't know if I would say that there's no more important astrological symbol than the moon. I think the moon is about equally as important as the sun, generally speaking. Also, the degree and sign of one's ascendant. But I would say, like I said in last week's episode of this, that in my experience at this point, I have found the ruler of the ascendant and its sign and house to be the most important thing of all, even above one's sun and moon, and even like the sign of one's ascendant. And again, to flesh that out in case you're new to that concept, I'm a Libra rising. Libra is ruled by Venus. The ruler of my ascendant is Venus, which I have in my chart in Aquarius and in the 5th house. So I love to have fun in unique ways, according to astrology. I would say that's accurate. All right. Where were we? From new to, yeah, we read that. She is the receptive yin to the sun's active yang that connects us to the past and sets the rhythms of the present. The location of the moon in your personal astrology chart influences your own emotional tendencies, just like it's the ebb and flow of the ocean tides, while the moon's current location in the sky impacts your feelings and behaviors in the here and now. Yeah, and you can even do this in a very simple sense. Like, say the transiting moon is currently going over your Mars. You may feel some level of anger or agitation. I know that whenever the moon goes over my Mars, I tend to, get even more pissed off than usual. Or maybe the moon is going over your Venus and you're feeling more social, more interested in aesthetics and indulgence in pleasure and stuff like that. You can look at simple stuff just like that to figure out some very basic, like, predictive astrology. All right, fast moon facts. They better be fast because we're 4 minutes away from 2 hours. The zodiac sign the moon rules: Cancer exalted in Taurus house. The moon rules fourth house of roots and security. The moon retrogrades never. The moon stays in each zodiac sign for 2.5 days. The moon makes a complete trip through the zodiac once every month. All right, the moon in Cancer. The emotionally charged moon rules over the sensitive zodiac sign Cancer. In astrology, the moon has a powerful hold over the human emotions, while Cancer is a tender sign driven by feelings and desires of affection. The moon sign Cancer embodies its lunar influence by taking responsibility for and prioritizing the feelings of those around it before all else. The moon in the fourth house. The moon also rules the fourth house, which is known as the house of security. The fourth house is all about roots, family, and childhood, and like Cancer, never ever associate signs with houses. The fourth house focuses on the home, both the physical aspects of making a home and the emotional connections we have with the things that make us feel safe and comfortable. Yeah, well, I'm not saying there aren't overlaps between signs and their corresponding numerical houses. There are, but it's going to mess with your understanding of signs and houses if you do that, in my humble opinion. The moon's lessons. The moon teaches us that constancy and change are not opposing forces, but interwoven strands of the same cloth. For individuals who lack a sense of solidity in their lives, the moon is a reminder to take note of the patterns of consistency that make them real. Even the most ungrounded people have talked, walked, thought, or acted in some habitual ways that reveal the consistency of their lives. Wanderers who continue to wander remain, nevertheless, themselves. On the other hand, anyone who is locked into rigid routines and diminished emotional flexibility can discover inner movement through the moon. We can learn to be moody, a word sharing the same root as the word moon, not in the sense of being depressed, but in the sense of being in motion. Yes, emotion, energy in motion. A simple way to do this is to write down the intensity of feelings every day on a scale of 1 to 5. Keeping a journal like this for at least 28 days, one lunar cycle, will reveal changes that show that feelings do fluctuate. Recognizing this fact can be a significant step toward breaking through insensitivity to oneself and eventually lead to more responsive self-care and nurturing. Astrologers tend to equate Mercury with mental functioning, which is partially true. Memory, though, is associated with the moon. It's as if Mercury is the lens of the camera or the mind's eye, and the moon is the medium on which images are recorded. What we remember of the past affects our perceptions of the present. Painful memories that haven't been addressed can cause us to shut down when similar circumstances arise. When our brains throw up stop signs of doubt or disbelief, it's helpful to double-check with our feelings to note where the source of resistance lies. It can often be felt in the body. We might rationalize perceptions, of course, as if they are solely based on logic. Adding the emotional realm of the moon to the equation, though, brings subjectively based information that makes a more complete picture of the situation, opening awareness and leading to better choices. The moon usually doesn't speak to us in words. She lives in the waters of instincts that flow below the level of language. Operating primarily on this plane inhibits consciousness, but failing to acknowledge its role in our behavior is equally limiting. Recovery of the nonverbal aspects of ourselves brings a subjective truth that, when integrated with reason, is essential to developing true self-knowledge. This connection rewards us with meaning, joy, and a more profound sense of fulfillment. All right, so that is the end of that article and the end of our stream on the moon today, our astrology basics stream. So be sure to join us next week when we take a look at Mercury for 2 hours in this astrology basic series. So I want to thank you all for watching, those who have been watching during this stream as it's going out live and who watch after the fact. And I want to thank YouTube for fixing whatever the hell was wrong. And at least when I checked it on my phone at the beginning of this stream, did appear to show this stream of mine in people's sub boxes and like homepage. So thank you, YouTube, for getting on that. I kind of depend upon that like a lot because, well, I just do. It's not like I have a bunch of people who know like when I'm going live without, you know. So anyway, there's that. I also want to briefly mention that I'll be back, of course, in an hour and a half. I should be anyway. I better be for my live tarot reading stream, where I will be doing tarot readings for on a pay what you want basis. So you can come by and donate as little as $1, and I'll be happy to give you a tarot reading on any question of your choice, as long as it's an ethical one. I'm doing those now on Fridays, every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, from 7 to 8 p.m. And for those who donate $20 or more, I'll also give you an astrological consultation as well, in addition to a tarot reading if you would like. All right. This has been so great. Don't want to interrupt the flow, but I have a question for the end. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Can a separate moon/planet conjunction in your natal chart affect how your moon sign expresses? Like, can a separate moon/planet conjunction in your natal chart affect how your moon sign expresses? A separate moon/planet conjunction. I think I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. I think you're asking, let's see, can a moon, if your natal moon is conjunct a particular planet, can that affect how your moon sign expresses? I would say yes, absolutely. Or more specifically, that's going to affect how your moon itself expresses. So let me think here. Say you had your moon conjunct Mars in your chart. That's going to infuse all of your moon stuff, so your emotions, your subconscious, your instincts, all the stuff we've been over, with Mars things. So like anger, assertion, aggression, willfulness, all that kind of stuff. I have a Capricorn moon, but Neptune conjunction. Okay, yes. That is going to make your moon sign far more Neptunian and feel almost more like a Pisces moon. Yes, you would under that configuration. Neptune energy being very much similar to Pisces energy, being the ruler of Pisces. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. So yes, the way that your moon expresses is going to be very much Neptunian and very much Piscean. So thank you for asking that question. That's a very good point for people to understand. I would say, let's see, you say you have a Capricorn moon conjunct Neptune. That's interesting because the Capricorn part of it is going to ground it in the sort of real world state of Capricorn, or real world energy of Capricorn. But the Neptune influence is going to introduce a lot of like non-physical, subjective, more emotional, imaginative, creative, spiritual kind of energy into your moon. So yes, you're absolutely right. You feel almost more like a Pisces moon. You would with such a conjunction. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. It helps explain things better to other people as well, I think. There's something else I was going to say though about, I don't think it applies to your specific case, but or no, actually, let's look at it this way. So this would apply to anyone. I mentioned this with the sun last week, but I also want to get it into the episode about the moon because this is very important. Another way of determining how your moon is going to manifest in your life is to look at the ruler of your moon. And so to use Liz here as an example, I hope you don't mind. So you say you have a Capricorn moon. So that means the ruler of your moon is Saturn. So what you would want to do is look at the sign and the house of your Saturn and know that that sign and that house are also going to affect how your moon expresses, because Saturn is their ruler. So let's also use my chart for an example here. I have the moon in Taurus, as I mentioned. The ruler of Taurus is Venus. Thus, the ruler of my moon is Venus. I have Venus in Aquarius and in the fifth house. So, Venus in Aquarius, which is like expressing affection in unique ways, a love of unique things and a love of intellectual things, a love of, say, new agey things. And also in the fifth house, loving to have fun and take risks. That's going to affect how my moon expresses, that Venus in Aquarius and in the fifth house. And indeed, I can say, like, Venus in the fifth house loves to have fun. The way that my emotions work, I mean, I almost can't do something unless I'm having fun doing it on some level. Like, even though I'm a Capricorn, I absolutely hate like arduous, monotonous work. I will always try to like play music or do something to make things fun. And so the ruler of your moon, thank you so much for bringing this up, Liz. Otherwise, I would have forgotten to mention this. Or asking your question, which then I guess led me to think of this. The ruler of your moon is going to affect how your moon expresses, and also like where that ruler of your moon is in your chart. So I know we're getting into some somewhat advanced stuff here, but this is for those who are ready for that, I guess. And also, if you want to take it even a step further, you can look at the ruler of your moon. And you could theoretically keep going until you can go no further in the chart, but I'd say just looking at the ruler of the ruler is generally where you're going to want to, well, that's generally going to be like the most relevant information in my experience. So for me, I mentioned the ruler of my moon is Venus in Aquarius traditionally, and I would recommend using the traditional rulerships for this, by the way. Traditionally, Aquarius is a Saturn-ruled sign, which I have in Capricorn and in the fourth house. Now, we don't need to get into how that, affects me personally. But just know that you can basically sort of use that double layering to get even more information about how your moon will express. And also my Saturn, the ruler of Venus, the ruler of my moon, I have conjunct my sun, which does also factor in for me. So yeah, I hope people find that valuable. Let's see, when I can get the balance right, it'll be amazing. I know, right? It's tricky, but I would recommend for challenges of that particular nature, where there's a part of you that feels very earthy and wants to be very practical, and there's a part of you that wants to be much more intuitive and spiritual and emotional. You can literally do like parts work, essentially. You can have those two parts talk to each other. If you want to learn how to do this, there's many different videos on YouTube. I would, as always, recommend the work of Teal Swan. Not Google, but search on YouTube Teal Swan parts work and watch her video on that for more information, and learn how to integrate the part of yourself that is more, let's say in your case, Capricorn-like, and the part of yourself that is more Neptune-like. Of course, it's also fascinating. Thank you for this. It is fascinating. Thank you for saying so, and you're very welcome. So yeah, thank you, Liz, and thank you everyone else who's been watching this and watches and supports my streams. I really appreciate that. As I mentioned, indeed, I'll be back this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time doing some live tarot readings, and hopefully YouTube notifies people of that stream as well. I'm hopefully then, I hope I have the energy, going to be doing some more forecasts for the month of April tonight. Then on Monday, of course, I'll be back with a Seth stream as usual, and a little something new and special planned that evening if I'm feeling up to it. So thanks again, and have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you in a little while.